Welcome to The Pivot Point, stories of courage, resilience, and reinvention. I'm your host, Jessica McGann, coach, producer, and creative, whose mission is to normalize the human experience, ignite the soul, and move you from feeling limited to limitless. Stories connect us. And my hope is that within this series, you will find at least one story that resonates with you on a deeply personal level, one that speaks to your soul or your current situation that will motivate you to keep moving forward, inspire you to make bold, brave choices in your own life, and help you feel less alone in the process. Today's episode is for the moms. I myself am not yet a parent, but I witnessed so many of my friends navigate this very big chapter in their lives, and I understand how parenthood changes our lives dramatically. For my guest today, Mia Dixon, the story is no different. She had always wanted to be a mother, and as the puzzle pieces of her life started to come together, she felt like having a baby and stepping into motherhood was the last piece of the puzzle, the last piece to making her feel whole. But she was wrong, kind of. Becoming a mom didn't fill her up in the ways that she had imagined, but instead left her with this sense of emptiness, like she was no longer Mia, and now she was just mom. In this episode, Mia shares how motherhood changed her life in many ways that she did not expect, and how she navigated this very emotional and very personal journey, how she listened to her instincts and created a life that today she feels very aligned and fulfilled in. Today, Mia Dixon is a baby and toddler sleep coach and the creator of Celebrate Sleep with Mia. And she has been helping families across the world achieve the sleep that they all deserve. She offers an individualized coaching approach to support all parenting styles in order to help them support their children in learning how to fall asleep independently. Mia has a vulnerable and powerful story to share with us today. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, Mia. I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you. Before I even hit record, I was mentioning how I have so many friends. They're stepping into parenthood right now. A lot of my girlfriends are having babies, and it really is such a pivotal moment in anybody's life, male or female, to welcome a child into this world. So I'm really excited to dive into this story of yours about how your experience as a mother really transformed your life. And to start off on your journey, maybe you could tell us a little bit about who you were and what life was like for you before you had children.
Well, thank you for having me on, Jess, and let me share my story.
Oh, I'm so
Um,
excited.
so, so I was born in South Africa, and I lived there until about 2000, and then we moved to Botswana for a bit, and then we moved over to the UK. So there's sort of a lot of a change quite early on. Um, and then I kind of just sort of had no sort of real idea where I was, like, what I wanted to do in life. So I kind of fell into doing occupational therapy. But then when I finished, I was like, this is not quite for me. So then I went in the teaching route. Um, and I met my husband sort of the first year of my degree in occupational therapy, and he was amazing, and he supported me to go out to Cape Town. So I went back home to go do my teaching. He was in the army. He's an ex-serviceman, and he actually served out in Afghanistan, where he lost half his leg. So we kind of met at the beginning of that journey for him as well. So at the beginning of our relationship, it was quite an interesting one, because he was kind of figuring out who he was going to be now with this new injury that he's picked up, and he didn't want to stay in the army because he couldn't do his role that he wanted to do. So we were just trying to figure out. I mean, I was 20, just before I turned 21 was when we
Wow.
met. So like we were still babies when we met.
Yeah.
um
And sounds
so
like
we
you were
had
there for him during his pivotal moment. Like that would really change the course of your life. I'm sure it
yeah,
would.
yeah, it did. And that's so funny, because actually at that point I was like, when he got back, and I was like, we'd just been sort of dating, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I tell a guy I'm not interested in him, but it's not because he's just lost his leg. I've just come out of a long-term relationship. No, no, no. And he was thinking exactly the same. Like, how do I tell this girl, I've come home. I just don't think this is for me. And I mean, that was like almost 15 years ago now. And, this is where we are, married with two incredible kids. So
So
it's
funny how that
amazing, like the
works.
changes in life. Yeah.
So did you
Um,
separate at that time? Like you went off to Cape Town and he stayed?
So no, we didn't separate. He was like, right, you go off, do that, and we'll just do the long distance thing and see how it goes.
Okay.
And it worked out for us. We were sort of we still wanted to be together when I got back, and and that point I moved in with him, which was a big thing because actually it's very going against the grain because in South Africa you kind of get married first before you live with your partner. So it was very different, but we kind of knew we wanted to be together. And at that point, I was just waiting for him to propose. I was like, right, we've been together for quite a while. When is this happening? And his family were all taking bets on every time we went away on holiday. Oh, this is it. This is
Oh
going to be the
gosh, no,
moment.
no pressure.
I know,
How long were
poor
you guys
guy.
how long were you together for then before he proposed?
Almost 8 years
Oh
before
wow.
he proposed. Yeah. And then we were together, like, we were engaged for like a year and a half because I was like, I want to get married in South Africa so that like my Oma and Opa can come because they weren't traveling. So
Hmm.
it was almost 10 years we've been together before we actually got married. And at that point, people were like, oh, finally, it's just happened. And you're also like ready then. You've sort of lived your life, you've had an incredible life together. Like we had amazing holidays and stuff, which doesn't happen when you have children anymore because it's completely different.
Yeah.
Um, so then I so I got back, went into teaching, um, and I loved working with children, but I just didn't feel, something was missing. So it just didn't quite feel right. And then that was off. Then we had kids, and that was just, I mean, my oldest was 3 months old when we went into lockdown for the first time with COVID. So
Yeah.
you're like, new mum, a newborn, just completely out of comfort zone. And your support is all taken away at that point. So you feel really lost and you're just trying to fumble through figuring out how to do it. Um, and then we'd also decided to move at that point and move away out of London. So we were living in London and we just like, we can't do another lockdown in London. So there was like a little gap and things really aligned beautifully. So we sold our place that we were living in and bought this house with our daughter, and she was 6 months old when we moved. So that was an experience in itself, um, which
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was a really big turning point for a lot of people where we've questioned, oh, I think I've been on autopilot. I feel like I need to make a change. Things are not actually aligned with how I want to be living. The pandemic really, what do they call it? The Great Reset. And to
yeah.
be a first-time parent during the pandemic when you had to be so afraid of everybody and had to keep your children safe must have been really scary.
And it was, and I think because you're so uncertain during that time as well. And my sister, who was a paramedic, so she was out on the road during this time. So she just cut herself off from us. She was like, I just can't risk it because in the early days where you didn't know how bad things were, and with our parents being older, like you just don't know. So you just get on with it and you just sort of you're in that real survival mode being, you don't really think about it until things start settling down. And we just kind of waited because we knew we wanted two children, and we were just kind of waiting for things to calm down and kind of go back to normality, but they just never really did. And then
Mm.
I fell pregnant really quickly with our youngest, Ollie, and which was, we were really lucky in that sense. And then we were still going through the pandemic, like doing lockdowns with me heavily pregnant and a toddler.
I'm curious. There's two parts I just want to go back to real quick before
Yeah.
we go too far forward is that One, you mentioned before you had kids, this sense of something missing in your life. And I'm curious to know if you thought that motherhood or a child was the thing to fill that space. And my second question is, how was your mental health as you started motherhood in a pandemic?
So I think exactly that. I thought I like there was always a part of me who was like, I'm just going to do teaching and then I'm going to become a mum and my life is going to be whole. I'm going to have fulfilled my purpose that society has told me I'm going to fill. And then I'm just going to be happy and I'm just going to love it. It's going to be fine. And then like the reality sets in. And I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I was just in like fight or flight mode that think, you don't really process anything. And my husband, he was still working. So Will was still working during the day. So he was up in the office. So he would, from about, and his job was trying to get, so he's working for banks, like in the branches, and he was like an area manager. So he was trying to get all the PPE out to his
Oh,
his the people who were working for him, like
yeah.
not for him, but like his teams and stuff to make sure they were safe. So he would be working and I'd be alone with this baby. So you're just trying to like do any and everything that you can do. Um, and looking back now, her naps, I became really anxious about her napping, and that became my slight obsession, like trying to get her to nap because she was an awful napper. I mean, she slept from about 6 months old. She slept beautifully through the night, but naps during the day were awful. But you've got no distractions. All the mummy and baby groups had stopped at that point, and I just started going. Sort of, I think it was maybe 4 weeks in when I felt brave. Like I was like, right, she was 2 months old. Like, right, let's start going. I had an incredible group of NCT friends. So, do not like when we go the classes, the prenatal classes that you do, and so I had these incredible friends and we started going to these baby and mummy classes, but you don't go for the class, you just go for the friends, and then you're all sharing
Connection.
and you're all sharing these experiences, and you're like, oh, this is normal then, because this is exactly how I was feeling, this is exactly what I was doing. And then you go into lockdown and then you're separated, and although we had a WhatsApp group and we were like like talking, you don't connect in the same way as what you do face to face. So all that connection is lost. But because we had no idea what we were doing or how long this was going to go on for, because without our government, they just kept saying, oh no, 6 weeks, and then we'll come out of it. And then 6 weeks came, and then, oh no, 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 just a few more, just a few more. And then you've had months in lockdown and you're like, oh gosh,
It
when
drove
is
people
this?
crazy. Like here in Canada, we got the same kind of thing. It was 2 more weeks, guys, just 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Wear a mask, actually wear two masks, actually wear the shield, wash your groceries every two. It just kept getting worse. And I remember me and my roommate being like, just 2 more weeks. Oh, okay. We did 2 weeks. We could do 2 more weeks. But we
Yeah.
were like hamsters going nuts in a cage.
Yeah. And my baby, well, she's not a baby anymore, but my youngest sister's out in Canada. So she lives in Toronto. So
Oh,
she had literally got there. Oh, she's going to correct me, maybe about a year or so before the pandemic happened.
oh,
And, so she was out there and all of a sudden she was so far away from us. So you can't just jump on a plane and go visit her. And that just really then separates you. So I had one sister who was a paramedic who just shut herself off. She was like, no, I can't see you guys, it's
right.
not safe. The other one in Canada physically cannot see, like we cannot see them.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know that was my immediate support system with my siblings, because I'm so close to them. That was gone already.
If I've noticed anything through my friends' experiences is that those who have the community and support around them, like their moms and dads and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles coming over and helping them do the laundry and do the cooking and hold the baby so that they can sleep, they are thriving. And those of my friends
Mm,
who are isolated, because my partner's military as well. And so I know a lot of women who travel because their partners
yeah.
are military and they're here far away from their families. And they're struggling because it's a lot for one person, two people to manage by themselves. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And then the hard thing is, like, now we're out of the pandemic, is actually feeling comfortable with accepting help, because you're so used to doing it yourself that it's been sort of, I really had to try and like train myself out of being like, oh, it has to be done this way or that way, like, and actually being like, it's okay, the children are safe, and I would never leave them with anyone who won't keep them safe. And
Mhm.
yes, things will be done differently, and sleep might go out the window a bit, but that's fine. And so that's been a big shift in me trying to be like, right, it's fine, that's it's okay for someone else to do it. It doesn't just have to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially, I'm sure there was some layer of like safety for the kids in terms of like the germs and stuff too, like fear of, oh my god, is it still around, who's touching my kid, who's breathing on my kid, who's on top of, do they know how to care for my child in the way that I would care for my child?
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
has this chapter um in your life, motherhood during COVID, changed your life?
So I think you know, you kind of, it's a hard one. Like, I think I'm still like processing it as well, because you sort of, so I left teaching, and then the plan was to go back to teaching. And, you know, because you've got your school holidays, term times are tough because you have to do so much work to try and like, fit it all in. But at least I have the holidays. And then when COVID came, it changed teaching completely. And
Mhm.
then my son also didn't sleep through the night for like the first, I think he was about 14 or 15 months before I actually like decided to sleep train him, when I was doing my sleep training course. um, and then that's when my mental health really deteriorated, because I wasn't getting any sleep, and I was the one responding to his nighttime wake ups, because my husband was working, so he couldn't do it, because I was the stay-at-home parent. And
Mhm.
with the toddler as well, so it just really quickly just sort of, you'll just go straight into survival mode, because you're not getting that replenishing sleep that you need in order to try and deal with it, to like a baby and a toddler. And it just got to breaking point at one point. I was like, I feel, and I was crying. I remember crying with my husband. I was like, I just feel like I just have mum now, where you've had dad just added onto your work title. Like, you're still
Oh,
you, but dad as well. And I'm just mum. Like, I feel like there's nothing of me anymore. And as I trying to figure out who I am, because motherhood is amazing, but it's hard. And it wasn't everything I was expecting it to be. So it didn't
mhm.
like make me feel, it sounds silly, but it didn't make me feel whole in the way I wanted it to, or thought it would. So
You said two things there that I really want to point out. When you said there was this evening where you just lost it and was like, I'm just mom now. Like, I'm just mom now. Like that, you get to be dad and I am just mom. And I feel like that is something that's going to land for a lot of women listening to this. Because what I hear is this consistent sense of a loss of identity when stepping into this. And then on top of that, you mentioned something that I thought was going to make me whole and make me feel like top of the world was so much harder than you expected. And I'm sure there was evenings where you were like, why did I do this? Or this is so hard. And I think that leads a lot of women into oh my God, postpartum depression, because
mm,
there's that sense of, I'm not enjoying this, and a guilt and shame attached to, why don't I love being a mom right now? Or why is this so much harder than I thought? And the shame spiral that can take people
yeah,
on.
that shame spiral is so true, because people are telling you that this is what you wanted, and this is so
You asked for this.
just, yeah, just
Oh,
get on with it.
there's women who can't have kids. You should be grateful.
And then you start feeling really guilty, and you're like, oh my gosh, am I doing something wrong? What's wrong with me? Why don't, like, I love my children, but this is so hard. And I just don't want to be with them. And you're like, so you just really start having these real battles with yourself, and you don't want to admit any of the stuff that you're thinking, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible mum.
Yeah.
And it's just so not true. It's just such a big mind shift, and sort of you just really trying to re-identify, like just find it, like rediscover who you are. And I
Yeah.
think particularly if you didn't have a very strong sense of self before, becoming a mum really rocks the boat, because your sense of self is really shook up, and I know some people absolutely love it and they thrive in it, and some of us just really struggle with it. And then you're trying to figure out, right, how do I move on from here? How do I, because this isn't, I can't, I can't go on like this. Something has to change, either or I'm going to break. So you're just like, you get to that point and you're just like, right, I need to change something because this isn't working
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
So what was that for you? What was that change?
So I think it was when I was like with Ollie, when he wasn't sleeping, I was like, right, I need to figure out how to get him to sleep because I can't do it. Um, and then I was looking into sort of going online, like trying to figure out how to help him, and then just coming across all this contradicting information, because some people say to do it this way, some people say that way, some people go, oh my gosh, do not even think of sleep training your son or your child because you will psychologically scar them for the rest of their lives. You will, like, that relationship with you will be broken forever. And so you just go in this real spiral, and you're like, oh, 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 okay. So what do I do now? Like, I am at breaking point. How can I carry on? And then I saw the sleep consulting, like, training, and I was like, read about it a bit more, and I was like, oh, actually, I like the sound of this. And I sort of, then you start actually looking at the research and you look into it a bit more, and you're like, oh, actually, all that information is just misinformation that's been spread incorrectly. So they've taken bits and bobs of a research study and run with it, and then made
Mm.
mums feel really guilty for daring to want to sleep again.
Mm. How dare
And
you? How dare you?
yeah, how dare you want your sleep?
How dare you
Because
want to care for yourself in any kind of way? Your life is your child.
I know. And also, like, and sleep is so important. Like, the more I looked into it, but even for your child, if they're not sleeping through the night, it's impacting them, as well as
Yeah,
you.
of
And
course.
if it's not working for you, you have to make a change. And that's when I decided, I said to my husband, it's like, right, I don't want to go back into teaching. It's giving me real anxiety. One, Ollie's not sleeping. Two, it's not an environment that I can go back into and be the mum I would like to be, even though you're sort of really struggling with who you're trying to figure out. So as you're trying to figure out who you want, you're like, I do want to be present for my children because I love them so, so much. And I just need to figure out a way to find out who I am and how I can be their mum that they deserve. And then after some chatting, he was like, right, fine, let's do this. You go and do the sleep coaching. It was just making that decision for me that felt right. I was like, something shifted, and I was like, yes, I can run my own business and I can do something that I love, helping support parents who are anxious about how to help their children learn how to sleep independently. And all the stuff I was learning, my mind was blown. I was like, what, we have to learn how to sleep? I thought that was just a given. Like, what? And actually, this is all stuff you learn, and then being able to support parents with how to do it. So it was that. And I still remember that day being like, right, here we go, here's the money for it, let's go. And then just starting to do it. And I've just loved it. I love working with the families. I love, it's those parents who sort of were like, oh no, but our child, we can't leave them to cry because they will actually physically be ill if we leave them too long. It's like, no, we can figure out a way of how to support you in a way. And then you do it, and then they come back to you. It's like, I didn't even think this was possible. She's sleeping, she's going, our child is going to bed, and they're sleeping the whole night. Like, how is that? It's like a whole new world for us, because we're sleeping, and particularly with parents who've got older children, and it's the youngest one who isn't sleeping, so similar situation to what I had. their whole worlds have changed, and you're like, I've helped you for 2 weeks, and such a small part, for such a small period, I've
Mhm.
helped you and I've changed your lives. And that for me is just, it's amazing. And it's so humbling every time I'm like, I get to help these people,
I can
which
tell by your
is,
energy how lit up you are by this. Like you can tell how passionate you are about helping these people through this because you have, from your own experience, know just how difficult it really is. So you have that extra layer of empathy attached to the passion to helping these humans. What
yeah,
is there
and
a
that's,
difference between sleep training and sleep coaching?
it's the same. So they call it the action. So sleep training is when you're doing the helping your child learn how to sleep. But I'm a sleep coach, so I'm coaching parents in how to help support their child. So they doing like the sleep learning bit. I don't like the sleep training because it sounds really hardcore. And it's not, it's just sleep learning. So you're learning new helpful sleep habits. And I'm a coach who will help coach the parents through it. So sort of supporting them, any anything that they worried about, any concerns, and I sort of guide them throughout the whole 2 weeks, sort of with everything like, oh, this hasn't worked, so let's just tweak. And usually it's just one or two small tiny things to tweak that then make a massive difference. And as a parent, if you don't know that, it can feel like months of trying to figure it out, and then you just give up because you're like, I just
Mm.
don't know where to go because there's so much. I think that's, the internet's amazing in how much information's at our fingertips, but it's also so overwhelming. And like with the parents, like being a parent, you always go to the internet, and then everything contradicts everything you're reading. So you're
Mhm.
just kind of stuck, well, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I, yeah.
What's
So
next? I want to
yeah.
go back to that decision because when you speak about it, that decision to step away from teaching, you're so clear as you describe that moment of I knew I didn't want teaching anymore and I knew I wanted to be present with my kids. And what I'm hearing is in that moment, you realigned yourself with what your values, your core values had turned into. Because our values change as we
Mm,
evolve. And you went with the flow of that evolution. It doesn't sound like you resisted it. It's like you knew that something had shifted, that what was important for you had changed, and you were ready to follow that impulse. Is that fair to say? And
yeah.
was it harder? Was it difficult to decide to quit that job and dive into entrepreneurialism?
So I think from the get go with teaching, I just was fumbling along. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with the kids, but I hated all the other stuff that came along with it.
Mm.
So I think I was just coasting through. Then, you have these incredible teachers who are so passionate about what they do. And then I was like, oh well, that's just not me. I'm just not a passionate person.
Mm.
That's fine. And I'll just kind of doing this because, I can kind of, it's supposed to be an easy job to do with children, which it isn't. And then
Not at all.
it's so not. And it used to frustrate me. It's like, oh, well, you've got summer holidays. I was like, yeah, to recuperate and then just try like psych myself up again to go back into it for the
Yes.
year. Um, but I think it was that shift in that decision being made. And I was like, I don't like this. Something has to change. And I can be quite impulsive sometimes with my decision making. And
Mhm.
I won't always necessarily have a plan. And if it feels right, I will do it. And this just felt right. And then from that moment on, everything just started feeling more aligned. I felt like more confident in my own decisions and what I was doing. And it's like little steps that you start taking,
Yeah.
and it's small progress that you make, and sort of, but it feels so great because I kind of look back now to, and I mean that was only a few months ago, like it was at the start of the year, so it's not even such a long time ago. And
Mhm.
I look back at who I was then to who I am now, and the change, and like, I'm a passionate person, but I found something I'm passionate about and that I want to do. And when you find that, you don't mind putting in the hard slog, because being an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, I would never in a million years thought this would ever be me, because I have to make all the decisions, and the buck stops with me. And so anything that goes wrong or anything like that,
Mhm.
it's me. But actually, that's fine, because I'm taking responsibility. So these are my choices. And there's a there's a saying, I think it's called, you're failing forwards. So it doesn't matter if you're
Yeah.
failing, as long as you keep going, it's not a fail. So it's that
Yeah.
first attempt in learning, and you just keep going, and you're figuring things out. And there's still stuff I'm learning, because marketing and all of that is just not in my wheelhouse, and it's just not something I've ever even thought of doing. But it's fine. And these steps I'm taking, they feel good. So
Mhm.
it's just figuring it out. And like, the ripple effect in the rest of my life has been amazing. I mean, now I'm running. I never thought I would be a runner, but I take when I drop the kids off at nursery, I've got Ollie on my back and B in the pushchair, and it's about like a half an hour walk, and then I run back home from that.
Good
And
for
I never
you.
ever thought I would be that kind of person, but actually, it's those small steps that make a big change and make a big difference. And as long as you're willing to keep going and keep trying and not give up, then you'll get, like, I'll get there. And you get there in the end, because you're figuring it out along the way and just not stopping.
This is such a great story to demonstrate what happens when you listen to how you're feeling and align yourself and make decisions that align with what you value and what you want. What I'm really hearing in your story is that life was maybe it was good. It was good. You were
Yeah.
happy. It wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you were just doing what you were told to do, get the job, get the partner, you have the babies, and that
Yeah.
motherhood maybe demanded that you feel some things. It demanded that you confront some internal feelings or views of the world. And you were really good at listening to that and moving with what you were hearing. So, like the passion and the running and the joy and the trust that as you navigate something that's hard and new that you aren't maybe as familiar with, you're able to stick with it and go, I'm going to figure this out because it is so much in with alignment with who you want to be in this world and who you know yourself to be currently.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think also, it's when you take a responsibility for your life and your choices.
Mm.
And like, I was just coasting along in life, and it was a great life. It was beautiful. And and then it's that day you decide, like, right, I'm now going to take responsibility for my actions and my steps. And that, I think, that in itself is a really powerful thing to do. And
100%.
if you make that decision, there's there's nothing stopping you from figuring it out. And you will get there, as long as you keep going and just keep figuring it out, because everything is figure outable. Like, there's this, I've heard that saying somewhere before, and it's so true. You just figure it out. If it doesn't work this way, then well, it hasn't worked that way, let's do it another way. I'm going to figure this out, and we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
And I think it's that fact that it's not that instant gratification that we're so used to now with society. Like, everything is instant
Social
gratification.
media.
It's not like that. I know.
You're
Hello.
addicted.
Yeah.
It's like I want to avoid. I'm going to switch on. I'm going to watch TikTok for 30 minutes and avoid
Yeah.
whatever else I
And
was
then,
supposed to be doing.
and then you're like 2 hours later, I'm still,
Yeah.
yeah, whoops. Let
Oh, it's
me.
4 a.m. I guess I should go to sleep.
Oh dear.
um, Mia, what have you learned throughout this experience of great change in your life?
I think the biggest thing is, have your cheerleaders, and those people who will always root for you no matter what. And I'm very lucky in the fact that I've got my sisters. Even though we don't live any like close to us, like, we don't live that close to each other, we're still constantly, like, all our achievements we put on the WhatsApp. We've got a sisters WhatsApp group, we put them on, like, oh, I did this. And we're all like, yes, keep going, you're doing that. doing great. Like my youngest sister's decided she wants to be a personal coach, like a personal trainer and a Pilates instructor. And that's completely different to what she had originally thought, but we're just there cheering her on. And so if
Yeah.
you've got your cheer squad, and it doesn't matter who they are, you can sort of, in those down moments when you're really doubting yourself, you've got someone to go to, and you're like, oh, I'm finding this really hard today. And like, no, we know, but you're doing really well. So keep going.
Support
And then
system
like,
makes the world of a
yeah,
difference. Or even
it
just
does.
surrounding yourself with positive thinking humans, like
Yeah.
recognizing what kind of energy and thoughts you're surrounding yourself with. Yes.
Hmm.
Step one.
And yeah, but with the positive energy as well. I think also social media, it depends on who you're following. So it's making sure
Oh,
you're
yeah.
following the right kind of voices that you want to like help propel you forward, and you're getting rid of all that negative stuff and being like,
Yeah.
right, this isn't serving me in any way, so I'm not even going to indulge in it. And then just nothing comes easy. So it's just, if you make a decision, just keep going, even on the hardest days, even if you only make a small progress, or you sort of, one step forward, two step back, just keep going forward.
Yeah.
Because as long as you don't give up, you cannot fail, because you will get there eventually. And that's like the hardest thing with being an entrepreneur as well. It's like I'm lucky in the fact that I don't need to worry about any, like I don't have to worry about doing another job. This
Hmm.
is my main focus. And then the children as well when they're not at nursery. But it's, you can figure it out and just keep going. You find those inspirational stories of these people who are amazing, and just keep going. You're like, yeah, I can do it, I'm going to do it. And just keep telling yourself like those positive affirmations,
Hmm.
and just keep, yeah, all I say is just keep going, because
You have such a beautiful and positive mindset, Mia. Like, I hope you know that, because so much of what I see is people see other people doing the things they want to do, and they think that there's no space for them to do it because Mia's already doing it. She's doing it so well. So I can't do it. There's no space for me to do it. And you looked at it as evidence that it was possible for you. They're doing that. I can do that. And that's exactly how you should see it. That's exactly how I want people to see these opportunities out in the world. And then also with the taking one piece at a time, as an entrepreneur myself, I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I was a freelancer before that. I think really it is about, what can you give today? Like, what can you do
mm,
today? And if that is just, I can watch 30 minutes of a podcast episode that teaches me about copywriting. That's all I can give today. Great. And if I end up writing an entire book in a day and that's what I could give that day,
yeah.
amazing. And if I can't give it the next day, I won't judge it, but just, what can you give today that is going to keep you on that track? What do you hope the listeners take away from your story?
That, just because you're a mom, it isn't the end of you. Yes, it's hard. It is so hard, but just to keep going, and just, you can find yourself again, and just, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, make sure you're getting your sleep as well, because that for me was a big one. And I'm here to help you if you want any help with your
Yeah.
sleep.
And if you are
So
struggling with sleep, you can call Mia. So, Mia, what is the best way for any of our listeners to work with you and get in touch with you if they're listening to this podcast and you're like, I need what Mia's got?
So I'm quite active on Instagram, and I share sort of lots of sleep tips and stuff on that. So that's at Celebrate Sleep with Mia on there, or you can go straight to my website and book a call straight away. And that is also celebratesleepwithmia.com, where you'll be able to find how it will look working together. You can book a call with me as well, and that call just helps you to kind of get a feel for who I am, and sort of, how I can help support you with your sleep. And then I also have, last thing is, I've got a free sort of sleep guide for exhausted parents, like with 5 simple steps that you can start implementing straight away, on how to help your child sort of learn how to sleep, and sort of how to getting the fundamentals right in with their falling asleep, which is on, you can get that by my Instagram or even on the website. So Yes.
Amazing. So there's lots of ways for people to connect with you, and I'm going to make it super easy for everyone. All these links are in the episode description below. So just scroll down, click away, and you can connect with Mia immediately today in this moment and get the sleep you need from someone who's navigated it firsthand. Thank you so much, Mia, for coming in, being vulnerable, sharing your stories and your expertise. It's been really nice connecting with you today.
No, thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and letting us know your thoughts in the comments below. It truly means the world to me to hear from you. New episodes will be available every Saturday, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about my work as a coach, today's guest, or have a story that you would like to share on the Pivot Point, check out the episode description for more information. Now, time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.